Like I said, we're just going to kind of hit the highlights because these different topics can take hours to explain. So the next one is domestic extremism, and we get asked this a lot about sovereign citizens. And sovereign citizen ideology varies from state to state, from city to city, and from the adherent themselves among each other. Some of them have different viewpoints of how far government is allowed to go, what the reach is. Some consider themselves an anti-government or tax protesters. Some they believe that government has a role, they support government, but they believe that the role of the government should be very limited and only allowed to do certain things. Some of them do not recognize any type of law enforcement authority. Some recognize only the sheriff. And then there's other cases where they only recognize the marshal. So to paint sovereigns with one big brush is just impossible. So I want to show a little video about a particular person that became a YouTube sensation because of his antics at a courthouse. If you see the first video, it's actually quite comical, but what he's turned into is not comical. And one of the things to remember with sovereign citizens is being a sovereign citizen is not against the law. Claiming to be sovereign is not against the law. My saying is you can be a hater all day long. You can hate as much as you want, but when you take it to that next level and you violate somebody's rights or you commit a crime or you do something that infringes on somebody else's rights and civil liberties, then it becomes an issue. And that's what we see with these sovereigns as they go through a metamorphosis, if you will. They start off very slow, very mild. They kind of verbally refuse to do certain things when they're stopped by law enforcement, and then they progress, and they also are radicalized in the same way, or they become emboldened the same way. They do a lot of things online. There's a lot of chat rooms online where they teach each other how to get around laws, how to file tax forms and things to try to get out of paying taxes. And a lot of times it just winds up making their situation worse. They wind up further in debt. The IRS starts to foreclose on them, trying to get their taxes, their tax money, that kind of thing. And then it just spirals out of control after that. Then they basically just believe the entire government structure, everything about the government is out to get them, and then it just kind of progresses more and more towards the more violent side of things. And when it gets to that tipping point, we have what happened in West Memphis, Arkansas, where a young man who was 16 murdered 2 police officers. His father was involved with it. They killed 2 veteran police officers on I-40, and that's the most extreme. And then there's the other side of the coin where they're just basically just kind of a pain. They just don't do what they're told. They passively resist and they're passively aggressive. So I want to show a little video, and it kind of sums up what sovereign citizens are. This is, again, a single case. It's not all sovereigns are like this, just an idea of kind of what they're about and what their ideas are and kind of how it goes.
And good evening, I'm Cynthia McFadden. Tonight, living outside the law. It may surprise you to learn there are a growing number of Americans living right here in the United States who insist that federal laws do not apply to them, including the 22-year-old who showed ABC's Dan Harris the radical lengths he's willing to go to fend off Uncle Sam.
I'm going to go in and speak with the prosecutor.
It's 8:20 on a Monday morning at the county courthouse in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
You can't come in with the camera.
And the 21-year-old operating this video camera is trying to bring it into the courtroom where he's contesting a minor ticket.
I don't know what the hell law book you're reading, man, but it doesn't apply to me.
Watch what happens next.
I'm going in.
No, you're not going in.
Don't touch me.
You're not going in, sir.
Let the record show that you just battered me.
Step back.
And you're using... Stop, please. I'm not doing anything wrong.
His name is Robert Peterson, and he says getting tased is a small price to pay for his belief that the American government has no authority over him.
What do you use it for?
Just target shooting right now. I haven't had to shoot anything yet.
So you would never take a reaction that was like shooting cops or...
If they shoot at me first, then shooting back would be a good reaction.
Robert is one of the latest and youngest people to latch on to many of the beliefs of a growing underground movement known as sovereign citizens. People who do not believe that many of the basic laws of this country apply to them.
I'm not an American citizen. I do not recognize these.
Advise you to not to say
I am my counsel.
They have disrupted courtrooms, led police on high-speed chases, and even engaged in murderous shootouts with authorities.
Oh my God.
There are an estimated 300,000 sovereign citizens in America. The FBI classifies them as a domestic terrorist movement. Many of these people followed a scary progression from passionate but peaceful to ultra-violent. So when we saw this video on YouTube, we wondered, were we witnessing the real-time radicalization of a 21-year-old on his way to violence?
You guys are really overstepping your bounds right now.
When we tracked him down, we found a young man who, on the surface at least, appears average. He lives in his mom's house with his 2 younger brothers. He rides his bike. But he also straps on a pistol every time he leaves the house, which is perfectly legal here in Idaho, and openly declares the local police to be his enemy.
Unfortunately, yes, they're the enemy. They're the enemy of anybody who wants to live free.
Produce the information that I require, or you will be placed under arrest for obstructing.
Robert's long series of run-ins with the cops began when he was 18 and got busted for making fireworks. That's when he went online and stumbled into a whole strange subterranean world of sovereign citizen ideology, which argues that the American government is actually a corporation profiting off of us, and that it is not necessary in many cases to pay taxes or get a driver's license.
Can't you see where people who've never been associated with this material before might look at this and say, this is just kind of weird?
Not really.
Robert's mother worries her son's beliefs will get him killed.
How do you see this thing ending?
Hard to say. My fear is that it's going to end with him getting shot. That's my ultimate, what I believe is going to happen.
Do you agree with your mother that your philosophy might end up getting you killed?
It could, yeah. But I'm willing to live with that or die with that.
It is certainly true that putting his beliefs into practice has produced non-stop conflict.
You have a gun, like I said, because I'm talking to you. It makes me a little nervous.
This is Robert arguing with officers giving him a ticket for riding his bike at night without a light.
Am I being charged with a crime yet?
Here he is trying to take his gun into a courthouse.
Hey, will you authorize me to come in here? With my gun?
No.
So for a 22-year-old, it's pretty extensive rap sheet.
He's certainly spent more time than most here at 22 years of age, that's for sure.
Do you worry that this is heading perhaps inexorably in a bad direction?
Well, we hope not, but we need to be aware who he is and his ideology, just in case that manifests itself into a problem down the road.
Now there is something in the chamber.
After months of bucking the system, the day Robert had been waiting for arrived. He was going back to the very same court where he was tased to face charges stemming from that incident.
Pre-trial conference. I don't really know what's going to happen other than they're going to probably offer me another deal, and I'll probably refuse it.
He was facing 2 years in jail for battery and contempt of court.
Take your stuff to the machine, take your hat off.
You don't have a warrant for this, do you?
No, I don't.
Can you step forward? Arms out, please.
There was extra security on hand, including the bailiff who tased Robert.
You don't ever want to do that to anybody, but our job is to protect the people and not cause the defendant harm or anything. You know, you always hate doing things like that.
Inside the courtroom, Robert's defiance continued.
If I could have you remove your hat, that'd be great.
No, thanks.
Out of respect for the court, they want him to take his hat off. But I get it. He doesn't have respect for the court.
He finally took off his hat, and the judge set a trial date 3 days later. But the next day, Robert was called back in front of the judge to discuss a possible deal. Look what happened when he refused to rise.
It's against my beliefs.
I will find you in contempt if you don't rise, sir.
All right, I will rise under protest then.
Fine.
In the end, Robert took the deal the prosecutors were offering. No jail, but he knows his struggle is not over.
Do you expect this to be your last run-in with the law?
Probably not, no.
Now Robert says he plans to sue the government for $15 million.
So it's just the invoice?
The next step in what he believes is a mission, one that he hopes will open the floodgates and inspire others to follow his lead. For Nightline, this is Dan Harris in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
And this guy is kind of pretty typical of a lot of what our courts and our law enforcement run into. He exercises his right to have a firearm as long as he doesn't commit a felony. He can carry it openly, just like anybody else. Like in our state, if he has a permit to carry a weapon, he can carry it. But it's just, in a lot of things that they do makes people uncomfortable. They are exercising their rights, though they may do it distastefully or in such a way, like with the judge, where they refuse. But ultimately, what we find is a lot of times they do concede, and they, like this guy said, oh, I do it under protest, like that's supposed to mean something, but they eventually do it. But it, like the other, like international terrorism, it does have that propensity to escalate eventually, unless something intervenes in this guy's life where he changes his way. But, you know, he's kind of one of these guys. He's 21 years old. He's living at home with his mom, and he's riding his bike. And he's not really, you know, at 21, I already had at least 2 cars by that time, and, you know, that kind of thing. So it kind of gives you a little insight to the person. And again, a lot of them they have different ideologies. Some will argue when they are stopped with the law enforcement, they'll argue the authorities of like the Magna Carta, or they'll argue the Declaration of Independence, or they'll argue the Constitution and that kind of thing. And a lot of times it's more of a distraction to get the officer off of why they're stopping them. And hopefully, and a lot of times officers just get tired of dealing with them. The judges also get tired of dealing with them. And it emboldens them because they just kick them back into play, and then they go about their business. So, and again, the sovereign citizen thing, we could go on for hours with this because, as you heard, they believe the United States is a corporation. It's no longer a government. And depending on what group, they believe that it might have been the Civil War when Abraham Lincoln put Congress into recess, that he didn't have the authority to do so. And at that point, then we're now under martial law, and we have been for the past 150 plus years. So it just depends on who you're talking to. There's a very, some of them have a very warped view or a very warped interpretation of the Constitution and that kind of thing. So, but that's just kind of an idea of the kind of things that we deal with constantly on a day-to-day basis. We did a survey of all 95 counties in the state of Tennessee. We had over 500 plus responses, and we found that every single county in the state in some form or fashion has had an encounter with a sovereign citizen of some kind, whether it be through the clerk's office, the court itself, the jail system, the park systems, in some way or another. Every single county in the state has had some type of interaction with sovereign citizens. So we'll move on to the next one, cyber and technology issues. Cyber issues, as the first 2 bullets here, there's probably no truer statement than these 2 right here. Cyber is no longer theoretical. It is a reality. The challenges we face, the things that we used to see on, you know, Sci-Fi Channel and all that stuff is now real. And everything about cyber now is becoming more and more interconnected. We are professionally and personally involved in some way or another with cyber. I'm sure every single person in here, just like myself, has some type of smart device or a tablet, or you're on it right now, not listening to me. Anyway, just kidding over there. So we're all connected, and this is becoming a big, huge problem, and it's a global problem. We are all becoming interconnected in one form or fashion. And just recently, I was reading an article. Everybody's probably heard about the Target breach. Does anybody know how these hackers got into Target? They breached Target through a mom and pop HVAC company that had a contract with Target, that had access to their billing program, and that's where the hackers got into Target. They sent a phishing email to this company. Somebody opened an email they weren't supposed to open, clicked on a link, you know, one of those too good to be true type of things. The Nigerian prince is giving you $1 million, and they clicked on it. And their family's from Ireland, but hey, I'm going to get rich. And they click on it, and next thing you know, the door is open, and then Pandora's box is wide open, and they're in there doing whatever they're doing. The other thing with interconnectivity is the Internet of Things, and this is where the theoretical and the real comes into place. Now it's no longer just the internet or cyber, it's the Internet of Things. We have smartphones, we have tablets, but now our wash machines, our refrigerators, in our home, and our vehicles are all connected by the web. There's a new product out. I'm looking at it for a house that I'm building. It's called the Nest. It means I can get on my smartphone and I can dial up if it's a cold day and I want to crank the heat up at the house. I can get on my phone and I can talk to my house and I can crank the heat up. But all this is web-based. All these things are connected to the internet, and each one of them has some type of flaw in one way or another. The other thing is our vehicles, and I'm going to show you a slide here in just a few minutes about our vehicles. As technology progresses, our vehicles become smarter, if you will. We have learning machines that learn how to do things and learn how to, like the Nest, they learn our habits. And all that becomes a vulnerability because it's out there in the net and it's in the wild, and people can exploit that. And another thing is something I read just the other day, and this goes into my next thing. It's really bring your own device, but I call it bring your own disaster. Because when you bring your personal devices to work and vice versa, you're just opening the door to have a lot of issues and expose your company or your state government or your agency to a lot of things. And one thing I just saw the other day that just made me really scratch my head is e-cigarettes. How many people in here do e-cigarettes? Anybody in here do e-cigarette? No one will admit to it? Okay, good idea. Because I just found out there was some scientists did a study on e-cigarettes. There's a brand of e-cigarettes that's coming to the United States from China where a malware has been embedded into the chip that's in that e-cigarette. And when you plug that e-cigarette into your laptop to charge it up, you download a virus to your computer through e-cigarettes. And who would have thought that? So that's where that bring your own device comes into play. So I want to also talk about criminal and terrorist use of the internet and cyber. I use cyber as a big umbrella, but the criminals are getting more and more tech savvy. Just like I said, the Nigerian prince, and you won the lottery in the United Kingdom and all that kind of stuff, because people want to get rich. They want, they're preying on our greed or our want to do something, or these, some kind of article that they've done some social engineering, or they've done their homework on somebody and said, hey, this guy likes airplanes, so I'm going to send him a bunch of articles on airplanes, and you'll open them because you're all about airplanes, and then they download some kind of virus. That's the criminal side, where they can go in and take. But the terrorists, as Lindsay pointed out, are using this and exploiting it every single day, every second of the day. They are becoming much more savvy about how to use it than we are. And it's a catch-up game. We're playing catch-up every single day. We're monitoring social media. We're looking at who they're talking to. We're having to translate it from different languages into English and that kind of thing. And it's becoming the wave of the future, something that we're going to have to deal with. And unfortunately, these kind of things cost money, and they require a lot of education so we can stay up on top of it. And that goes into the social media part. And that's the other side. This is kind of more of a warning with social media. If you're on social media, I just say get off it. Because it's just, there's so many things out there. People put so much. I looked at a friend of mine the other day. He sent me something, and something popped up in a document he gave me. So I went and looked at it, and there he is showing himself, his children, and he's in front of his house, and his license plate on his car is right there. And it's like, if I'm looking for something about somebody, I can learn a whole lot just looking at a single photograph. And you have to be very mindful of that, because that's what the criminals and that's what the terrorists are doing. They're going out and they're data mining all this stuff, and they're looking at it, and that's how they're preying on people, and that's how they know to send you, hey, you like Avon or you like Mary Kay, because on your Facebook page you've got a whole bunch of stuff. I sell Mary Kay, so they want to reach out to you and they send you something, and that's how they get you hooked. A couple of fun facts about cyber. And this is where it kind of really all comes together with the interconnectivity and how we're going from that theoretical to real. And, I got 2 minutes and then the doctor's up. So anyway, just look at those over. But look between 15 and 44, the number of people that have a computer. And then down at the bottom, how many people are using video services? Video services are just wrought with malware and viruses. If you're looking at it on your work computers or your iPhones and your iPads, and then you're going and you're logging into your email and you're getting into these sensitive documents, you're just asking for trouble big time. Like I said, we have to kind of speed up with something that came up with the Consumer Reports. This came from, and the key word here is then Ford Vice President. This freaked a lot of people out. And I don't know if this has both of them pulled up, but a poll was done afterwards, after this guy's made his statement about how Ford company knows everything you're doing, how you're driving, what you're doing with your vehicle. 83% of us believe that it's very or somewhat concerned about our privacy and how much our vehicle tells about us, especially with GPS and that kind of thing. A couple of examples that hit home here to the state of Tennessee. This summer we had the National Governors Association come to town. We got 150 1 gigabyte USB thumb drives that were shipped to us from China. And I did a scan of all these devices, and of the 115, almost 10% of them had some type of problem with them. They were either doing remote connections, meaning as soon as they were plugged in to the computer, they connected to the internet, or they had some other kind of problem with it. And some of the implications, and I said this earlier, and I'm being given the hook here so the doctor can get up here, but BYOD is a bad thing. If you're connecting and using personal devices and doing personal business on your work computers or your work devices, you're just exposing your company or your agency to a lot of issues. The other is internal threats, and it's not so much somebody being a bad actor, but this bad behavior then becomes an internal problem because somebody can exploit that bad behavior. And then lastly, and something that really should hit home to us, is when there's a loss of data, that means there's a loss of money. Somebody has to pay for this. And like one of our neighboring states, it's costing them $200 million right now to monitor their citizens' credit scores and their credit to repair the damage that was done by loss of data through a data breach of their state system. Some of the things moving forward, I'm giving the red X, okay? Some of the things that we're working on, one thing I want to hit here is, especially with cyber, is that we do have a cybersecurity council now, and we host an annual cyber summit at MTSU. We're employing a cyber threat analyst, and we're reaching out to the private sector to try to make this better.